Today we're going to start talking about the fourth and final method that you can use to solve quadratic equations algebraically, which is called the quadratic formula. Let's go ahead and look at the quadratic formula here. If you have an equation ax squared plus bx plus c and it's equal to 0, you can solve using the quadratic formula, which is the negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now this here looks pretty complicated, but I promise you, if this little girl here can memorize it, you can too.
Papa was so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
Good job, Emily. What about the x equals?
X equals negative b.
Uh-huh.
X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2.
Okay, so like I said, if she can memorize it, she's about 3, you can too. Here's another version of that song to help you memorize the formula a little bit easier to understand, and it's also created by a local school.
The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now you try. The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
And we'll play that one more time because I hope it gets stuck in your head.
The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now you try. The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
Okay, so if you need to, you can play that song over and over again. We'll put the link in the notes. Let's go ahead and talk about how we're actually going to use that quadratic formula to help us solve a problem. Okay, so example 1 here has a quadratic equation, 4x squared minus 5x minus 51 equals 0. First step here is to move all the terms to the left side so that we have an equal 0 there. Since ours is already equal to 0, we don't actually have to do that step. We're going to move on to step 2. So step 2 says label the coefficients and constant as a, b, and c, or c. So a is going to be 4, b is that negative 5, and c is going to be that negative 51. So for 3, we're going to take those 3 numbers that we just labeled and plug them into the quadratic formula, making sure we put parentheses around each number when we plug it in. So here's our quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's go ahead and plug those in. Since our b is already negative, that's actually the opposite. So negative b means the opposite of b. So we're going to change that to a positive 5 plus or minus. And then when we plug it in, it's going to stay negative for the second part. But notice I put in parentheses. Minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 51. Okay, all over 2a. So 2 times a, which is 4. Okay, so you just did step 3 there. Pretty easy. Notice when I plug those in, I didn't use any x's. So we shouldn't have any x's inside our square root or that fraction at all. Okay, the next step, I highly recommend you use your calculator and are really careful when you enter this. If you start by entering just the part inside the square root, don't actually enter the square root, just the part on the inside. So I'm going to start by entering this here, exactly as I see it. So I'm going to do parentheses, negative 5, parentheses squared, minus 4, parentheses, 4, parentheses, negative 51, parentheses. So when I hit enter there, after typing that part into my calculator, I get 841. So we have 5 plus or minus the square root of 841 all over, and then 2 times 4 on the bottom is 8. After we've done that step, we're going to go ahead and take the square root. Now, one thing that I noticed often is students will take the square root and then leave the square root symbol there. If you type in the square root of 841 and you get an answer, get rid of that square root symbol. So, square root of 841 is 29. Notice that I didn't put the square root sign around that again. We already taken care of that, so we got rid of it. From here, important step, this plus or minus sign tells us we actually have 2 parts to this. The first one is 5 plus 29 over 8. The second one is 5 minus 29 over 8. And you can actually type both of those in your calculator as well. Just make sure you put parentheses around the top or the numerator, because if you don't, you're going to get the wrong answer. So, if you type that in with parentheses, 5 plus 29 over 8, you get 4.25. So that's our first answer. If you type the second one in, 5 minus 29 over 8, you get negative 3. Those are our 2 answers. Let's do one more together. For the next one, notice this time that we have this minus 2 on the right side. We need to move that to the other side. So I'm going to do plus 2 on both sides first. So I have 3x squared plus 4x minus 5 equals 0. So that's my first step. Second step is to label your coefficients a, b, and c. Go ahead and label our coefficients a, b, and c. So a is 3, b is 4, c is negative 5. I want to plug those in to the quadratic formula. So again, the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I highly recommend writing that down for every problem you do for a couple of reasons. One, it helps you memorize it, and 2, it makes it easier to make sure you plug things in correctly. So, once we have that and we've labeled our a, b, and c, we're going to plug those in. So, negative b means we're going to take our b, which is 4, and change our sign. So we have negative 4. Plus or minus the square root. B squared would be 4 squared minus 4 times a. Our a this time is 3. And then c, which is negative 5. All over 2 times 8, which is 3. So again, we're going to take the part that's inside the square root and type that into our calculator to figure out what this would be here. So, parentheses, 4, parentheses squared, minus 4, parentheses 3, parentheses negative 5, gives us 76. So we're going to have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 76 all over 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, now when you type the square root of 76 into the calculator, you actually do not get a whole number like we did in the last one. We get a decimal. So we're going to use that decimal. So we have negative 4 plus or minus, and then the square root of 76 is 8.718 all over 6. And our final step here is going to be to write this out twice so that we can find our 2 answers. So we're going to go ahead and do negative 4 plus that decimal. And make sure before you type that in your calculator, put parentheses around it. And then we're going to do negative 4 minus that decimal, 8.718 divided by 6. Make sure you put parentheses around that before you type it in your calculator. So you are going to do negative 4 plus 8.718 in parentheses on the top and divide by 6 on the bottom. You get 7.786. Okay, so that's our first answer. When you type the second one in, -4 minus 8.718 divided by 6, you get -2.1196, actually rounds up to 0.120. Okay, so those are your two answers. Biggest thing about the quadratic formula is memorizing it, making sure you're really careful plugging things in correctly. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Go ahead and try the 2 guided practice problems. When they're done, have them checked to make sure you're on the right track, and then try your homework. And once you've finished your homework and are feeling pretty confident with that, go ahead and try the quiz. Have a great day.